for your choice. And then we'll take those one by one, and slowly we'll also improve our understanding by filling in the minus blank here. Obviously, the plus here will correspond to some degree to the minus there. But we'll start with the arguments for ethnic parties. No, it's for monoethnic federal units. And then we take them one by one. Okay? So, selected to speak for the consociationalist solution is Tom, Aron and Clara. So take it a bit point by point so that I will have time to enter the main arguments for it. Okay?
Okay. So we believe that having multi-ethnic units can lead to a situation where minorities in the country keep getting their rights and voices ignored, thus repeating and maybe leading to the same concerns and issues that led the war to break out in countries from the first place.
Okay. Yeah? Yes. So, what's the argument for then?
Well, that if they have some kind of influence over, like territorial sub-state influence, they can still feel that they have control and influence over their territorial unit, and they're basically guaranteed that influence, at least like the political elite of certain ethnic groups. And in that sense, they'll probably feel more represented.
Yeah, so creating a sense of security and participation for ethnic groups.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any additional arguments that you come across? Is that your main one?
Yeah, I think so, but we can have an additional.
Okay, so we'll leave it at that for the time being. Among the rest of you, there were others who also advocated this solution. Is there anything you'd like to add here? Why would this be a good idea to create monoethnic units? Or was there any other group who wrote that? No. Okay, so we leave it at that then. Okay? Classic case, a security guarantee during at least the early stages of coexistence. Yeah? Okay. So, the rest of you wanted multi-ethnic units. And then I'll begin with Elijah, Alice and Hilma. What was your main argument for this?
Our main argument was that if the Constitution explicitly recognizes ethnic groups through political institutions, ethnic identity may become the main organizing principle of politics, which could encourage political leaders to mobilize voters along ethnic lines rather than focusing on national policies and development.
Okay.
Instead, they should encourage cooperation across ethnic groups. By creating ethnically defined regions could leave minority groups vulnerable to exclusion within those territories. So multi-ethnic federal groups would encourage political leaders to appeal to a broader range of voters and get cross-ethnic coalition.
Okay, so this is a way then, your argument is to encourage cross-ethnic cooperation. Yeah? Okay, any other arguments for this? Yeah.
It decreases the chance of like clientelism, that it becomes this kind of loyalty to the ethnic elites who are in charge of who would be in charge of non-ethnic units.
Okay, so counteracts clientelist. Okay, at these pens are hold. Counteracts clientelist. At what level? Locally, nationally, or both?
Mainly locally, I'd say. Mainly at the level of these like units.
Okay. Because otherwise the risk is that they become fiefdoms of.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah, just on the negative, that I think in the consociational democracy, really, it said that it risks becoming a majority dictatorship. I think they called it, like if if there isn't consociationalism in a divided country, it can become a majority dictatorship.
Okay, so the idea here for sorry, come again. Is that where do you want to place it?
Yeah, on the negative side of multi-ethnic units, in the sense that if ethnic groups don't have some kind of either territorial influence, veto rights, power sharing, none of those kinds of proposal, it can lead to the smaller minorities because of the country being so divided and ethnicity and politics still being so interlinked. It's very likely that even though that people will still vote according to their ethnicity, then it could become like a majority dictatorship where the majority ethnicity votes in the same interest and smaller minorities don't get their voices heard.
This is obviously the flip side of this argument, right? So if you don't have this, if you're a consociationalist, it's an awful word, if you're a consociationalist, believing in the recognition of ethnic groups, you believe in this security, a security guarantee for ethnic groups, particularly in the vulnerable early stages after conflict. If you don't have this, this is what part and others would say. Okay, you follow the integrationist part. What they say is that the integrationist part looks very good in theory, but in practice, it can lead to this. Because the wounds are still raw, there is not enough trust, and the conditions for collaboration across boundaries are just not there. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Any other arguments that you would want to put up here on the whiteboard? Yes?
Even though I see this thing from the start, since the conflict has been a violent civil war, that in the long term, I would argue that it builds, as Laila argued, that it forces political leaders to mobilize along different ethnic groups. So in the long term, they work for economic policies and other stuff that will build the country.
So I had add here the long term view.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important to have this time perspective. I suppose Jeff talked a bit about that. In practice, the idea is very often that in peace agreements and so on, that in the beginning you have a sort of a power sharing solution for accommodation, but over time that is supposed to be superseded, taken over by coexistence, right? So if we apply this for the Constitution or as policy, it depends whether we talk about the immediate short-term solution or the long-term solution, because they might be different things. Yeah.
I'm supposed to argue for mono-ethnic units, but I thought in the negative we can think that if there is like inequalities of power or economic inequalities between the ethnic groups, or if they perceive those inequalities, then it might lead to a new war or something like that.
Okay, how does that argument work? Why would it lead to?
Because one ethnic group might think that they are not subordinated but inferior to another, and they might choose other means to express themselves, such as violence instead of.
Mm-hmm. And the idea here is that you create mono-ethnic units,
And they
which are equal in terms of having the ethnic group, but they are unequal in terms of the economic resources they have. Okay.
Yeah, you could now also arguing against our point, but just building on Tom's, it could cause conflict if like secessionist movements start. Like if you already have territories based on a certain ethnic group in a country which maybe haven't been historically like a nation state in that sense, then there's a big risk that maybe those territorial units like want to leave the country. I think which is pretty common in a lot of this kind of ethnically divided countries.
Yes, so here it is, inequalities. Might lead to renewed tensions. This is one or two C's? It's one C, right? Secession. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah.
Well, I'll continue. This is just for the next.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And that's a big debate in peace and conflict studies, political scientists. Will decentralization, blah, 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 lead, and it's not just ethnic decentralization. Decentralization is often an instrument to share power across territories, obviously, not necessarily between ethnic groups. And the idea might be that it will introduce more participation if you move more power and resources from the national government to local government. The idea is that, okay, there is more local influence. You have a chance by voting in local elections and so on to influence things where you live. So that's the idea for in development terms. And of course in the peace and stability argument is that you move the conflicts away from the national center so that not all conflict or conflicts between ethnic groups will lead to a struggle over capturing state power, life and death struggle. You sort of devolve tension away from the center. The question then is, will it lead to that, or is it moving either corruption, as has been the argument in development, moving corruption to the local level, or moving conflict to the local level? Or will it actually be counterproductive in that it actually fuels more fire? Yeah?
Yeah, I just want to bring up our potential disadvantage
Yeah.
with the multi-ethnic units, which could be that the ethnic groups that previously felt excluded may fear that they once again would be marginalized in a system that does not explicitly guarantee ethnic representation.
Yeah. Repeat of old marginalization. Yeah? Because this, again, the integrationist approach is a promise of a future, better future, based on coexistence. But if that has never been rooted before, it might be very difficult to build the conditions for such coexistence. Yeah?
And also, like we often think about the groups that feel marginalized, but I'm not an expert on that topic, but from what I remember in Yugoslavia, the first countries to leave Yugoslavia were the richest countries because they felt like they were paying so much for people that were not related to them or something. So
Yeah.
maybe it can also lead to those type of secessionists, like, I don't know.
Do you mean, as an argument?
As a negative against
Mono-ethnic.
yes.
Mm-hmm. Good point. I'll take up on that after Aron's.
Yeah, I just had a point on the plus side that for consociationalism that it was stated that like a lot of the countries that had implemented it, like Bosnia, Lebanon, they mentioned some African countries, they mentioned some like European, like Netherlands and Belgium, that it had worked as a pretty good system to generally, like from an empirical standpoint, to divide power, and it rarely led to like conflict breaking out again.
So empirical support for stability. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who do I complain to? Yeah. But going back to what Tom said about the inequalities, yes, that's very important to recognize. It's not always the most disadvantaged group that wants to break away or start a conflict with a center. It can, as you suggest, be the other way around. In the case of Slovenia, which was the first republic to break away from Yugoslavia in 1989, it was by far the richest and most developed. It's possibly difficult to it's not the fact that they were the most developed that wanted them to break away, though it could have contributed. There might have been a discourse in terms of why should we all pay taxes in order to subsidize all these poorer regions who don't make an effort. That was very much the case with the creation of regional parties in Italy, the Lega Nord and so on, saying, okay, we're the rich, industrious people of the north, pay taxes to the central government in Rome in order to subsidize the laggards in the south who never do an honest day of work. You know, that kind of rhetoric was there. And then it was the richest regions that wanted to, perhaps not leave Italy, but at least withdraw their, have a more regional-based government in order to improve that. And also the case of Catalonia, who wanted to break away from Spain, and Catalonia is one of the richest regions in Spain. So it might be, it's not perhaps fear of being the poorest, but the fear of being tied to a system where you might stand to lose. And that's also important. It's the expectations. So if you are in a system, you're the richest region, pay more, contribute more to the center, but that's all right as long as the economy is growing, things are developing. But if the forecast, your predictions is that, well, the economy is going down, so maybe that will introduce new risks for us. And why should we, be charged for the economic downturn?
And I feel like it's the same in the European Union because at least for the populist parties, they usually refer to. At least I know that in France, like there has been a period where the National Assembly wanted to break out with the EU because we were giving too much to countries like Eastern European countries or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You have those dynamics that can come from the top, but it both are dissatisfaction with the political center and the political arrangements of sharing power and resources. Mm-hmm. Okay, is there anything more you'd like to add to either plus or minus to either. There's some important argument that you stated that hasn't been discussed yet.
Maybe the last one. For empirical stability, it's true, but if you think about Belgium, they don't have a government for so long. Like, maybe it's like it can work in terms of long-term stability, but maybe in the short term it can lead to less efficiency.
Yeah, and again, that depends on what your aim is. If the aim is to stop the bleeding, so to speak, you have an emergency, and then you set the bar fairly low. You want to prevent a continuation of the war or an outbreak of a new war. Then, of course, you want stability, not at all cost, but at a high cost. So it depends on where you are at, and depends on your expectations. How much can you expect to achieve given these the conditions in the country? Okay, so let's move on then to ethnic parties. This is more difficult. I don't think there was a very clear-cut stances here, but to promote, you start.
Yeah. We argue for power sharing arrangements between ethnic parties, to promote ethnic parties, because our first argument was that it could limit or at least reduce the conflicts, which are often which often results by fear of not having enough power in the cabinets or in the parliaments. So promoting the ethnic parties could show to every ethnic groups that they are represented in the power,
Yeah, it's tied again to the security. A seat at the table is what I've written there, both symbolically, but also in terms of actually being a part of the bargain. Mm-hmm. Was that your main, most important argument?
Yeah, I think so. To promote coalition building and cooperation among former belligerents, while guaranteeing the political institutions still the legitimacy of them still being applicable.
Yeah. So is this argument, does this extend beyond not only promoting ethnic parties, but also promoting a collaboration in government between them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Coalition governments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Because otherwise you would have ethnic parties that are constantly in government and those who are constantly in opposition. So that's the way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But on the other hand, it could lead to more divisions, because all parties are. I'm so sorry. It's difficult to express myself.
It's okay.
Because there would not be a common national identity, but several ethnic identities, all divided and maybe conflictual between each other.
Yeah. Of a common national identity. Yeah.
Just building on that, formalizing differences between ethnic groups can also create sort of legitimacy for conflict. like by kind of solidifying them as separate and competitive.
Yeah. It's the separation or division between ethnic groups takes a life on its own, right? You start to see it as a fact of life, a state of nature. It's always been like this. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if I've done answered it correctly, but I think you can compare this to the corporate consolidation, I guess.
Yeah.
So like deciding on how many percent of the government is divided between different groups.
Yeah.
Like, and the positive thing of that is like it creates predictability and like stability and security. But like people who doesn't fit into these categories, like mixed people from or
Yeah.
minorities that they never even get a legal chance of representation.
Yeah. What about the rest? Those who don't necessarily identify with either, those of mixed heritage, those who resist.
I don't know if it kind of blends into the other like cons, but we also brought up the fear of if there have been past like civil conflict between ethnic groups, that this can still influence if we promote ethnic parties. It can still brew under the surface.
Yeah. If these, depending on the nature of these parties also, right? So, after Civil War, let's say you have Civil War, you have militias and so on, and they lay down their arms, they create political parties, but perhaps these parties may in some cases be extensions of armed groups representing ethnic groups. So it depends on, are there any mechanisms of accountability in relation to the top brass of these parties, or are these parties sort of run completely by the old military leadership? So it depends on the nature of the party. How can you... So the predictability, the stability argument is between relations between these parties, right? So they even each other out in a way. They balance one another out. But what about the stability within the ethnic groups and the ability to hold people to account?
I guess that when there's no competition between like, the two groups, then the competition becomes internal. So it's to fight for like who's the most like hardliner and presents our ethnicity one. Then like it becomes.
Is this then related to the term outbidding?
Yeah.
Outbidding or brinkmanship. And this is, of course, connected to the way identity divides are legitimized. If they are sort of the only political game in town, competition between ethnic groups, obviously there is a risk that, we can be even more ethnic. No, we can be even more ethnic. So that's the logic it takes on.
Continuing on that, there's also like the flip side argument to the one about clientelism, that here, if you belong to a certain ethnic group, you're expected to vote for a certain party, no matter what policy they actually drive. So it becomes less about voting for policy and ideology, and it becomes more about ethnic group loyalty.
Yeah. And then what we have then is not accountability, ethnic group loyalty, is not about accountability from below, but strong social pressure from above to behave in ways that are expected of you, given your ethnicity. Okay, is there anything you would like to say a few words about preventing ethnic parties? We've been through quite a lot here, but is there anything that hasn't been brought up yet?
Just a minus on the preventing ethnic parties, that in this specific country context, that basically means banning the major common parties currently, which would destabilize civil society by leaving a power vacuum.
Yeah.
Because most of the established parties that people can vote for would not be allowed.
Yeah. And then, of course, the power sharing idea is to get people to enter institutionalized politics. I mean, and you're saying that this creates the risk that they will run away from institutionalized politics.
Yeah, it lessens trust in democratic institutions.
It's again counts for prevent ethnic parties. If ethnic parties don't have a seat in parliament or in cabinets, etc., they don't have legal way to express themselves, and so they could use like extra constitutional and illegal way to express their demands, such as violence. So that's a count.
So a minus here.
Yeah.
Could trigger violence. Given this, then, okay, no scope for us, obviously, in institutional politics. We still have our demands. How do we promote them? Extra institution, yeah.
But at the same time, if you recognize ethnic groups but not ethnic parties, maybe you can depoliticize the ethnicities.
Yeah.
By preventing ethnic parties, you allow people to make new associations that are drawn along, the lines of ideology and not ethnicity.
Yeah.
In the process, depoliticizing ethnic groups and fostering ethnic cooperation.
Create new room for new ideas, ideologies, identities that have been suppressed before, not formally but in practice.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with our con on the last one, stands in the way of a common national identity. When preventing ethnic parties, like you said, it could promote a more national identity as well.
So where do I put this?
No, as a pro for prevent, it's the same. It's bouncing off the last one, like the national.
Common national identity. Yeah. Because these, as some of you have alluded to, these are only 2 items on the agenda, 2 techniques. There are also others that are part of power sharing agreements in these contexts. I mean, we just, for the sake of simplicity and time, we picked 2 issues, but it depends. If you, like Tom says, you ban ethnic political parties, okay, but you encourage ethnicity in other ways by creating units, ensuring rights in the constitution, or have coalition governments consisting of the main parties, then you have indirectly, a seat at the table through another vehicle. Or you have guaranteed access to resources, representation, recognition in other ways. So you can sort of mix. And the McCulloch article is very good in outlining the more complex ways you can design and think about these systems. There are, liberal consociationists, which some of you have alluded to. These are sort of ideal type versions that we have dealt with so far, but obviously in the real world you need to fine tune depending on the circumstances and the sort of problems you face. Yeah. Any other that you feel should be here? Okay, of course, so this is all about institutional solutions to these problems. There are also other types of solutions. in addressing conflicts or suspicion? What could they be if they're not institutional?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, well, you know, okay, you have a problem, you have conflicts between groups. How do you address that? So one way to address it is to work through institutions. You design institutions. We need to rewrite the constitution, we need to change the political system in order to accommodate this and to reduce tensions. But are there other ways to reduce tensions than designing institutions? Could you go about a different way to reduce tensions between groups? To think about other types of strategies than institution writing. And what would that be?
Could be like a social level. Like, I think it's connected to this as well, but fostering trust through different events and programs. I don't know how to do it, but like to build trust
Yes.
overall.
Yeah. That's one way.
Promoting like cultural aspects of all minorities, like maybe all minorities have the right to like learn their language in school or something like that.
Yeah. So you could have a graded form of integration, if you will. Yeah. But I was thinking it's related to what Tom said about rich and poor regions. Is that it? Because often these tensions are due to inequality, right? It's not just ethnic pluralism as such. Normally that creates conflict. It's normally related to inequalities with regards to access to political power or economic resources. So this is a way to even out access to political power. But with regard to economic resources, I mean, that's the other path you could choose. If you have great economic regional disparities, okay, let's aim to even them out, you know. You allocate more money to that poor region. But of course, it would run the risk of having people in the richer regions dissatisfied, the stuff that we talked about, but that's one attempt that could be made. That is not mainly institutional in nature. Regional politics.
Like overall, with this power sharing system, like the former like group of power, isn't there risk that they lose that power and like economic resources?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah, that's the risk, that you create dissatisfaction if you raise taxes in a richer region. Yeah, so that's a balance as well. So that will be a game of give and take. You take something, but perhaps you can balance that out the way you create political institutions. Or you have many tools to work with here, but it all depends. If the economy is overall stagnant, then perhaps you run the risk of political stagnation as well. If you take the case of coexistence in former Yugoslavia and Bosnia, you have you have frozen identities, you have a kind of peace there, but there is not much interaction. So it hasn't gone very much beyond a ceasefire, and the road to real integration between the ethnic groups is very long in the case of Bosnia. So that's sort of, many people feel that we are perennially stuck in a condition of separateness. Okay, what's the time now? It's high time, unless there is something urgent. Is there anything about these perspectives that you feel you don't understand, that you don't really get? Consociationism, integrations, yeah.
Well, could you just like maybe explain the difference between the corporate and liberal consociationalism? More like very.
Oh, that's very fine-tuned. But in a nutshell, the corporate is more group-oriented in its understanding of who should have, who is it for, and whose identity should be secured. So it's a lot more group focused. And it's not as concerned with, well, as you hear, the liberal version is more concerned with the individual. It's an attempt, I can't outline the technical details of it all, but it's an attempt to safeguard individual rights and freedom within such a system, so that you avoid all the drawbacks that we talked about, that individuals who don't agree perhaps with the way ethnic leaders speak about you can still find safeguards, you know, in a political system which are sort of guaranteed for individual rights and freedoms. Something like that. Yeah? Anyone else?
Just a small consultation, was it always based on like a third division of ethnic groups?
Or do you mean it could be other kinds of groups?
No, just I'm not sure I've like followed the concept exactly, but like it is the reverse to multi-ethnic units that they.
Yeah. Consociationism is always assuming that these groups exist, that there is division between them. We need to accommodate it in a different way. We can have a solution of multi-ethnic units from a consociationist perspective, but then it needs to be balanced by really strong power-sharing institutions at the national centre, for instance, so that perhaps a way to deal with this, if you're Arnold Leipart, is to say that okay, let's allow for multi-ethnic units at the lower level, but in that case we need to safeguard the centre, perhaps more resources to the centre, and real guaranteed power sharing at the centre. So again, different levels, different ways to checks and balance, but it's all about ensuring stability and preventing these conflicts to open up again. Okay, good. I think we covered quite a lot and captured all the main. Again, as I said, your memos are verified. So what we do now, take a 15-minute break, reassemble here at 11:25, and then we talk about the second question. And what I want you to do then is we set out from the empirical examples that you provided and see group by group and see where that takes us in terms of theory. All right, so 15 minutes.